Hi there, Andrew Ambrosius. Welcome back to the Art of Business English. Now, this is episode 97, and this week I'm going to be looking at making suggestions and proposals for your next meeting. So we'll be covering the type of language that you need when you want to make a proposal or a suggestion in a meeting. Okay, so let's just dive straight in and get things underway. Now, the first one, or the first sort of expressions we'll be covering are formal suggestions or formal proposals. So some formal language that you can use if you want to, give proposals or make suggestions in meetings. So the first one is I propose that we. So we can just go straight in and use the verb propose. So I propose that we. The next one we can use is I suggest that we. Okay, so it's very similar. Propose, suggest. You can use this type of language. You could also say I advise, we or you, I advise. So to give the advice, some advice. Okay, but we're using the verb here to advise. Okay, so I advise, or I advise you, or I advise we do this. The next one is I would recommend we. Now, I would recommend we. Now, you need to remember that recommend is followed by a gerund or a sentence. So, subject, verb, object. So, I recommend we do this, or I recommend doing this. Okay, it's really important that we don't put an infinitive after recommend or suggest. So, I recommend we, not I recommend to do. Okay, it's I recommend doing. All right, let's look at the next one. I put forward that. So when you put something forward, it means you're putting an idea on the table. Okay, so you are making a proposal. Okay, so those are 5 ways which we can put forward proposals in a formal way. Okay, so remember the type of meeting, the style of the meeting will depend on what type of language you're using. So if it's a formal meeting, you need to make formal proposals, then you could use these expressions. In the next part of the episode, we're going to look at less formal expressions or neutral ones. So less formal suggestions or less formal expressions for making proposals or suggestions. Okay, so let's take a look at the first one. The first one is I think we should. It's very simple. I think we should. Okay, remember we use should when we want to give some advice. So I think we should do this. And because should is a conditional, it's not followed by an infinitive. It's always followed by just a bare infinitive. So a bare infinitive is a verb without the to. So I think we should make, or I think we should do, or I think we should run, or I think we should invest. Okay, so you're following the verb without to. The next one is why don't we? So this is a bit tentative. If you say why don't we, it means it's a suggestion, but it's very tentative. You're not really committing to it. You're just throwing ideas around. So why don't we do this? Okay, we could try that. So why don't we? How about is the next one. How about we try this? Or how about we do that? So you can see the difference between the more formal expressions. These expressions are less, they're less formal, and they're also a bit more tentative, meaning that, they're not as committing as other ones would be. The next one is what about? What about trying this? Now, about is a preposition, so the verbs that come after it must be in gerund. So what about investing in? What about trying this? What about doing that? Okay, so all of the verbs that follow about must be in gerund. Okay, we could also use we could try. We could try. We could try. And again, when the verb try is followed by a gerund, in this case, if we say we could try investing in a new platform, we could try doing this. Okay, so it's a little bit different when it's an infinitive. We tried to do things. So when we're making like a recommendation or a suggestion, we generally use try with a gerund. Okay, but when we try to do an activity, like I tried to fix the car, but it did not work, that is different. We would use an infinitive, so try to do, when we actually are saying that we made an attempt at something. But when we make suggestions, we generally use try with a gerund. So, have you tried talking to John? Okay. Have you tried fixing the car before? Okay. So those are the differences between using try with an infinitive and try with a gerund. And the last one is let's have a go at. So to have a go at something is an informal phrasal verb meaning to attempt to do. So let's have a go at this, or let's have a go at that. Okay, it's a great expression. We use it a lot in Australia. To have a go at something means give it a try. Okay, and it's quite informal. All right, let's look at the next one then, which is making like positive responses. Now, when I say positive responses, I mean these are the responses to people's proposals. Okay, so we could say something like this. Okay, if someone makes a good proposal and you're happy with it, or a good suggestion, then you could say good or great idea. So that's a good idea. That's a great idea. We could then try that sounds fine. That sounds fine. Okay, so you're accepting that, you're happy with that proposal. The next one is I agree. Okay, if you agree with what someone says, you could say I agree. Now remember, it's really good if you like someone's idea to always just follow it up with like, yeah, good point, good idea, I agree. Okay, it's good, effective communication skill. The next one is I think I can work with that, or I think we could work with that. So you can make a variation. I think I can work with that, or I think we could work with that, meaning to work with something means that you can, do it, or it's a possibility. It's something that won't like pose many problems for you. Okay, and you also say, "Good point, John." I like that one. Good point, John. So you're acknowledging that the idea that the person proposed or the suggestion they made was a good point. Okay, so there are some other ones. Maybe you're not quite sure. You want to be neutral or tentative in your responses, so you don't want to fully commit. In situations where you don't want to fully commit, you'll need to do the following, or use the following expressions. We can start with something like, "That's true, but." Now remember, with but, you need to be careful with but. It's a very powerful word, because whatever you say, often but negates everything that was said before it. So you need to be really careful the way you use it. For example, if you say, "Yeah, that was a great idea, but," then the person knows that what you said before but wasn't really a great idea. You're just being nice. Okay, so be very careful with but. So that's true, but, and then you go on and explain why, or your perspective. Okay, the next one is, "I see what you're saying." I see what you are saying. I see what you're saying. It sounds like it could be something interesting. You could also say, "I see what you're saying, but," and again, you're acknowledging that you understand what the person is trying to suggest or propose, but maybe you're not in full agreement. Okay. Now the next one is, "We could try that if." Now, if we attach a condition to our sentences, then it makes it less, more tentative and less probable. For example, if I say, "Yeah, we could try that if this happened," so you're saying that the proposal is accepted or acceptable, but only based on a condition that you then introduce in the next part of your sentence. So, if conditionals are really a great way to make things conditional, and well, obviously because they're if conditionals, but they're a great way to attach condition and make things less tentative, or the acceptance of things based on another outcome, okay, or another aspect of whatever it is that's being negotiated or discussed. So yeah, really encourage you to use if conditionals in this sense. Another one is, "It sounds okay, but we should think it over." So it sounds okay, but we should think it over. So you're telling the person it sounds okay, but you're not committing. You're saying we should think it over, which means we need more time to consider what you are suggesting or proposing. Okay, so that's a good one too. You're sort of half committing, but not fully. All right. Another one is, I see your point, but what if we? Again, so you're acknowledging the person's point, but then you're saying, what if this happens? So you're presenting an alternative reality or alternative perspective, and therefore, you're not fully committing to the proposal. You're presenting a counter proposal or a counter idea, which, makes your acceptance of their proposal less certain and more tentative. Okay. All right. The next one is, I'll have to check with the boss, or I'll have to check with my boss, or I'll have to check with my team. So that's a good one. You don't want to commit, so you just say, look, I need to check. If you don't check, then maybe you accept something that's not okay with your boss or with the rest of the team. So it's good to say, yeah, that sounds interesting, but I'll have to check with the boss before committing or before agreeing. Okay, so that's another good one, to be a bit more tentative. Now, if you don't like the proposal, you need to look at some negative responses. It's possible that you do not really agree with the proposals or the suggestions being made. So then you need to have some sentences or some expressions that you can use to, just to make that your disagreement clear to the other person. And there are some ways that you can do that without being rude, okay? The first one is we say, I'm afraid. Now, I'm afraid doesn't mean I'm scared, okay? It does mean I'm scared, but I'm afraid we can't do that means I'm sorry, okay? So we use I'm afraid, which is the same as I'm sorry in this context. I know that I'm afraid can also mean, tengo miedo, but in this case it's me temo, okay? So me temo is I'm afraid I can't do that. Okay, so it's a nice way to say you're sorry that you can't do or accept this proposal. Excuse me. The next one is, I can't agree to that. So, I can't agree to that. It's very clear that you don't agree, or you're not able to agree. This means if you say I can't agree to that, it's a little bit better than saying I don't agree to that. If you say I can't agree to that, it sounds like the conditions for you to agree maybe are outside of your control. If you say I don't agree with that, it means that you personally do not agree with what's being proposed. But maybe if you say I'm sorry, I can't agree to that, or we couldn't agree to that, it sort of means that there are external factors that maybe are having an impact. So that can be a little bit better and less direct than I don't agree. So I can't agree to that. The next one is that would be out of the question. Now, that's quite a strong statement, so be careful when you use it. So I'll just repeat that. That would be out of the question, or that is out of the question. Now, if you do say that, remember it's quite strong, so you need to be careful with the way you use that. So out of the question means that there is no room for negotiation. You flatly disagree with what's being said. So just be careful when you use that is out of the question, or that would be out of the question. Okay, but it's a good expression. It makes it very clear to the person that you don't agree. Okay, the next one is that is not something we can consider. So again, if you say that is not something that we can consider, or that is not something we could consider, and again, this is making it clear that unfortunately, this type of thing is outside of your company's policy, or something, something a bit more external to you personally. So that can also be a good expression to use if you don't want the person to feel that you are flatly rejecting their proposal. Okay, and another one is, I'm sorry, but that won't work. Okay, so before in the other ones we said I can work with that. But with this one, we say, I'm sorry, that won't work, okay? So it's probably better to say that won't work as opposed to I can't work with that. If you say that won't work, it sort of, again, sounds like it's something outside of your control, but it's not something that you're able to agree with personally. So again, being a little bit less direct it can be a bit politer. So I'm sorry, but that won't work, or I'm sorry, that won't work for us, or I'm sorry, that won't work for our company. Okay, so those are some expressions that you can use to express your disagreement to proposals or suggestions that have been made. Okay, and finally, we're just going to look at some expressions that you can use to invite others at the table or in the meeting to make their suggestions. Okay, so pretty simple and straightforward. The first one is, what's your suggestion? Okay, you bring people in. John, what's your suggestion? And that way you can get some ideas generated. The next one is, what do you think? Very simple, very straightforward. What do you think? Don't forget to put in the auxiliary do. So what do you think? What do you think, John? So again, asking for opinion. You could also say, any ideas, John? That's not technically a question, but we use the intonation in our voice to show that it's a question. Any ideas, John? So with this like rising intonation, we can express to others in the meeting that it's a question. So any ideas, John? And John will know that you're asking him for his ideas. Okay, the next one is, what would you propose we do? I like this one. When there's a bit of disagreement or there's a bit of blockage, you can say, well, what would you propose we do? And that way, if you're the one always providing, or if you're the one always offering suggestions and always the one trying to offer solutions and they keep being rejected, you could say, okay, well, what would you propose we do? And then the ball is in their court. That person then must come up with a suggestion that they think is relevant and useful. Okay, so that one's also very useful. The next one is, would you like to put forward an idea? So if someone's been quiet, or they could be offering something, you could say, well, would you like to put forward an idea? Would you like to put forward an idea? Okay, so those are just some quick expressions for you to use in your next meeting. Really helpful. Now, they will be up on the Art of Business English website, so head over to the post if you're listening to the podcast and you would like to, actually grab a copy of these expressions or see them. You can also watch the video on YouTube, our YouTube channel. So if you prefer to watch the video and take some notes, then please feel free. You can either watch it over at YouTube on the Art of Business English, or you can watch it. It's embedded in our website. So yeah, just a quick episode here for me this week, just to get you guys, some tips on how to make suggestions and proposals in meetings. Now, it is, if you're listening to this episode in November of 2019, it is Black Friday, Cyber Monday week. So of course, everyone is got their deals for this period. So we're going to do the same. So we've got all of our courses, general English courses and our business English courses. They're all available now over at the Art of Business English University website for only $99 per course. So that's basically like a 70% discount. So all you need to do, there's no need for you to apply any discount code. Just go in, select any of the courses that you want to purchase, and at checkout you'll only be charged $99 for those courses. Now remember, those courses give you unlimited access for unlimited period of time to whatever course you purchase. So they're a great option, and all of our courses have a 30-day money back guarantee if you are not 100% happy with the wonderful content that we provide you, which I'm sure you will be. So check out the Art of Business English University and grab yourself a copy of any course you like for just $99. Now, this is going to be running until the 2nd of December, which is just, I believe, Cyber Monday. So get on board, don't be shy, and if you have any questions, then just let me know. I'm always here. I hope you're loving this series on meetings, and I look forward to having you again next week. And remember, enjoy. It's almost Christmas. We're heading towards the festive season. And if you're in the States, happy Thanksgiving to you. And if you're not, have a great week all the same. Take care. Bye for now.